Hello, good morning, or good evening, depending on what time this is in your ears. I'm Stuart, and this is Reanimated. It's episode 196. We are here to talk about zombies and undead stuff. Hopefully, you're on board with that. Like I already said, I'm Stuart. With me is H.A. Conrad. Oh, H.A., it's gonna be a day. How are you doing?
I'm awesome.
Awesome, H.A. Today we're talking about The Passage. The Passage is interesting, I think, from a personal Reanimated perspective, because it's probably one of the first titles that you and I talked about and geeked out about.
True.
But, I mean, it really, way back in the day, it kind of was. It was before we started talking about zombie stuff. We were both so psyched about this book series, and we kind of just were trading, our impressions of it.
Right.
That must have been, how long ago was that?
It's a while. But, I mean, I would also say that this is definitely not quite, it's more in the viral sort of echelon of things as opposed to the zombie specific echelon of things. So,
yeah.
But definitely, I mean, the first book was what blew us both away.
Yeah.
I would argue that it lost some legs as the series went forward, the book series, that is, but, it was just really interesting. Just the description of the very quick chaos that happened in the world. And it's still a lot to like about it, I think. And of course, we were very psyched when we saw that they were originally scheduled to make a movie about this. I think that's what the original plan was. And then they decided ultimately to make a series out of it. And I think that was probably a good call, though admittedly I started to get worried because there has been a long sort of delay in releasing this. Like originally this was supposed to be out, this was supposed to be out a while ago as far as I'm aware, and then we heard about some reshoots and having to bring on a new director to do those reshoots, and so that does not usually bode well for how the series is coming together. But I'll save it for our reviews, but I'm very curious to hear what you think about some of the changes, and I'd argue that some of them were necessary in order to make the storyline move along in this kind of format.
Yeah, but that's what we're going to be talking about. And I'm trying to remember what year the book even came out. Do you recall?
Is it 2011, maybe?
Maybe. Well, yeah.
I think maybe 2011. But I'm not here. Well, probably we should look that up, right?
Yeah.
Just to be sure.
2010. Not to say that we read it in 2010, but I think we're not too far off.
No, I think we read it I feel like we read it when the first two were out. So yeah. Probably shortly after the second one was released, and maybe that's how we found out about it, was that they were doing a lot of press for the second book. Which is good for us, or at least for me, in terms of reading a series. You know those pesky series that never actually wrap up?
No, I've never encountered one of those.
George R.R. Martin.
Patrick Rothfuss.
I'm talking to you. But anyway, so that was kind of cool to be able to read more of the story. Because it is epic, and I would imagine that as an author, this kind of a series took forever to put together and to write and to make sure that you were being consistent. So,
yeah.
But in any case, we'll be
one more detail on this because I know we are going to talk about a little bit of news too. But this was also the first. This was coming on the tail of the Twilight vampire books,
right? And
my prior experience in reading books about vampires had been mostly Anne Rice, which has its ups and downs.
Yeah, it's got its own thing.
Anne Rice had some pretty good storytelling too, but then this was a different kind of vampire. This was and this predates The Strain too, which
Correct.
Also took a page from this idea. And it's just kind of unfortunate that The Strain went through its entire creative process and went to a TV show before this one ever could,
right? Because
it was unique before. And so the type of transmission and the type of creatures that result from it were all sort of a new take on vampirism. So that was super interesting, I think, for both of us. And I'm still interested in that, and because it does append so nicely to our zombie
right.
mythos. But so we'll get to more of the passage shortly. But for right now, we do have just a couple of quick little bits of news. One of them is I was very surprised to see on Gizmodo that there is another Korean medieval zombie project coming out this year.
Yeah, I feel like this is in the zeitgeist right now. We've got a lot of stuff to do with samurais and zombies and things like that. I've also noticed that there's been a lot of just a resurgence in older like samurai and kung fu films and things like that. For like Alamo Drafthouse here in Brooklyn is doing like screenings of Lady Snowblood, which I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's like a lot of what some of the characters in Kill Bill or that kind of film are based upon. And in the zeitgeist right now, still we've got zombies. So what's a better thing to blend than samurais and zombies, martial arts and zombies? I fully support this combination.
Yeah, it's strange that the Kingdom I don't think the Kingdom has even aired yet, or maybe it just did.
It just did
on Netflix, and or sorry, Kingdom, right?
Yeah, Kingdom.
But this is so much in the same wheelhouse. Like it's not even samurai; it's just Korean swordsmen. Like they, like I don't know. You could branch a little bit and make it. Maybe it's being made by Koreans, so why would they be like, I'm going to make a movie about samurai? They didn't have samurai.
Well, they're pulling from that genre, though, and they're making it their own thing, I think. So,
but that samurai have more armor and would arguably be better equipped to fight zombies. In my opinion. Anyway, Rampant is the name of this film. It's got some connections to Train to Busan. And it's going to be a movie coming out in February 26th. Apparently, it had a small opening already last year, but we haven't seen it. So look forward on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital February 26th. Crazy. It's like a month from now. So.
Well, all I can think is that the people who are making this and the people who are making Kingdom, I imagine them being like, I can't believe Kingdom's being released on January 25th. Yeah. But anyway, and speaking of Kingdom, it is getting very good reviews. A lot of people who say that even people who are not into the zombie genre should watch this. I have generally stayed away from reading too much about it because I've been trying to save myself. I haven't yet started watching it. Have you?
No, I haven't yet. No.
But we will be reviewing that very shortly. But ahead of that, we also have rumors, just one more news item. Rumors about Zombieland 2 are out there. And there's again, I'm kind of surprised that Bill Murray is able to come back given
Hey, I called it. You said no way Bill Murray can be in this movie. Well, and now it's not only Bill Murray but Dan Aykroyd too.
I know. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I support it. I don't really care what they do to make him come back, but I'm cool with that. My guess is he'll be the twin of Bill Murray, right? But in any case, coming around with some more storylines in this, which I think this is going to be fun. It's in the same spirit, so I think it'll be fine.
And they're going to have some different types of zombies. They're this is the rumor part: homers, hawkings, and ninjas. So dummies, smart ones, and I guess ninjas. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a real
romp
adventure. So we'll see how that goes. That also has a release date now, which is October 11th.
Yep.
So looking forward to it. With that, we can jump into the passage. Episode 1 had the very inventive name of Pilot. It was directed by Jason Ensler and Marcos Siega, and written by Liz Heldens, who also has the credit of developing the entire series. And she has written the first 2 episodes. So.
Right.
These have a very non-Walking Dead audience numbers of the pilot opening to 5.23 million. And the second one was 4.23. I've been watching it on Hulu. I don't know where you've been watching it, H.A.
I have been watching it on Hulu as well.
Yeah, I love it that Hulu has some of these shows that as soon as they're out, I don't know. This is me just marveling at the future that I live in. Like old man yells at Cloud, except old man congratulates Cloud on being
cool.
Very, very cool. So Yeah, should we talk about pilot?
Yeah, let's talk about the pilot. And I mean, before we jump into this, I will say that when we heard that this was being developed, this is a very dense story. Much like Game of Thrones, there are a lot of storylines, there are a lot of characters, and there is a lot of background to get through to get you to the point where all the action starts to happen. So I part of why I was worried when we were hearing some of these rumors about it being reshoot, like having to edit it, being like reshooting scenes and things like that, was that when you have a storyline as dense as this and as many characters, you worry that they're going to lose some of the sort of the crux of the story, the good parts of it. They've definitely made some changes within the storyline. Though I also think that some of this is also based upon budget. I don't know what the budget for this is, but I would say it's probably not the same budget that you have for certain Netflix shows. But that being said, at this point, I'm on board with some of the changes that they've made, and I think that they had to streamline it to some extent.
So go into with our usual disclaimer of spoilers.
Right.
We're going to talk about some of the changes
Right.
here. So HA, you seemed like you were maybe more read up on the original storyline versus how it's been presented in the TV show. So why don't you launch?
Well, I mean, so we've got so the sort of the way that the books work, it is similar to Game of Thrones in that you're seeing the different storylines of the different characters. So they're following a lot of the main characters, and you're getting all their backstory. You're getting that sort of that lead up to why things are the way they are. Obviously, when you're making a show like this, you have to move things along a little bit more quickly. And in the book, especially the original one, you're not seeing characters come together for quite some time. So they definitely speed that along a lot. Amy, who is one of the main characters, in fact, I'd argue she is the main character of the whole series.
Yeah.
She is. They tweak her storyline a lot, so they don't focus as much upon her mother in the television series as they do in the book. And you know, they kind of bring her along very quickly, and they have a couple of changes in her character. So in the book, she's kind of a little weird, and younger, I think. And she doesn't really talk that much. Like, she's almost like, I don't want to say toddler age, but she's a little over that. So she's like, she's just not really as sassy as the Amy in the television series, though I like the change. And they basically how she ends up, and again, we're going to totally spoil things here. So there is a whole government project going on. In the books, it is to make super soldiers. In this series, it's to battle a worldwide pandemic. That seems
there is a worldwide pandemic in the book,
but it's
too.
not focused as much upon as this. But they're kind of moving this along a little bit.
Yeah.
And so in this case, they're looking for test subjects, and they have to find a kid that is basically not claimed by anybody. In the books, she ends up at a nunnery, basically, and that connects her with one of the main characters. And in this case, it's just her mom dies of an overdose, so she ends up with the police, and they figure out that she doesn't have anybody to claim her. But because they decide to do that, that brings her in contact with the main character of Brad Wolgast, played by Mark Paul Gosselaar, and very quickly. And the actor who's playing Amy is Senia Sidney, and she's pretty awesome. And so they make these tweaks. They do bring in one of the main characters from the books that you meet in the nunnery, Lacey, but they bring her in later on, and they bring her in as like a connection with Wolgast, so they're trying to connect some of these characters, and I thought that was an okay way to do it. They also connect in Wolgast's ex-wife, She doesn't actually have all that much contact directly with him, and definitely no real face-to-face contact with him in the books. It's all things happening to her separately, but in this case, they bring them together. And this is Dr. Lila Kyle is the character, played by Emmanuel Creaky. And so, I think that they successfully streamline these stories, even though I know that probably fans of the books are going to have some issues with the fact that they've cut out some of these really rich backstories. But I think that it works. And I definitely think that they kept some of the most important pieces of this, which is the connection between Wolgast and Amy Belafonte. And I think that these two, Mark Paul Gosselaar and Sania Sidney are really connected together and cute together. They have that bond, and it doesn't feel forced. I feel like initially it does a little bit, but then they kind of get into it, and I do think that you need to have that chemistry to make this story work at all.
In the first episode really works on the chemistry between Wolgast and Amy. It almost seems like the pace of him going from "we can do this job" to "I care about this child as if she were my own" goes a little fast, maybe, but it's also just, for a human being who isn't like a mindless robot, right, automaton agent, it's also completely, I would assume, completely natural. If anything, it's his partner who seems strangely robotic. So, that's kind of the first episode is or a lot of it is Brad and Amy's relationship, and it ends effectively with him saying he's shot and bleeding and saying, "I'm never going to leave you," and it's we get there within 45 minutes. It's kind of crazy.
It is, but as I was saying, it doesn't feel entirely forced, and also they do play along the storyline where he has lost his own daughter. And so they definitely play upon that he's really having these paternal feelings. But as you said, as anybody would, you're not going to, you're not going to feel like nothing even if this was your job. There is also the other, and this is definitely part of the books, is this ethical dilemma. So you have these scientists that have asked to have this kid because they need basically just the biology of a kid to work with this supposed cure that they've come up with.
Which is just a hypothesis.
It is a hypothesis, so they don't really know that this is going to actually work. So you have all of these scientists and not just scientists, but doctors, going against what is their Socratic, this is just not something. Do no harm is certainly something that is it's weird how they get over it a little bit too quickly, but they get over it in the way of saying that this is for the greater good in order to save humanity, and they truly feel like this is a big threat. That said, they don't really read in these two agents into what is happening. They know that they have to get the kid, and they have been bringing subjects back, but all the subjects up until this point have been convicts who generally have been accused of pretty heinous crimes. So, there is a huge shift from bringing back those people to bringing back an 8-year-old kid. Or a 10-year-old kid, I think is how old they make her in this. Or at least that's how she seems to me. But so... I think that they do a successful job in that. And then you also, the other, especially the piece that I think is a little harder to get around is that when you have seen the results of what they are doing in their experiments on the other subjects, it would be, I think, very hard to get to the point where you're like, okay, we're going to try this out, this unproven hypothesis on a kid. Because they really haven't gotten to the point where people are normal with this particular vaccine or whatever it is that they're trying. The results have been horrific generally, and turns the people who they are testing on into quote unquote vampires. And this is, do you think that they would get there? Because it feels like they get there pretty fast in terms of blurring this line and trying to get this kid.
Yeah, this is not I don't think this is a super realistic scenario. But, to take the vampires out of it for a second and just assume that you've got some other disease that like, let's call it rabies. They're going to inject a child with rabies because
Right.
they have a feeling like they're not going to become
Right.
rabid just because there's a disease going around that's killed. I think they say something like 20,000 people.
Right.
The CDC, I think, would have other resources
Right.
than this like completely off the books project. Yeah, so I'm not. It's a little bit of a stretch, and it's definitely concerning that this is like one of the first introductory scenes you get with the science people.
Right.
Is when he's like, and it's also a little just in terms of production, it's a little bit heavy-handed that he's like, this young scientist is like, all right, let's go downstairs. It's going to be easier for me to explain it to you. And really, it's just a scene of God, what's the word? My brain is not working yet. When you explain everything in the plot, exposition. Thank you very much. He basically just brings them downstairs to do exposition for the audience by introducing every single vampire that they have and giving some background about them. Like this one was a white supremacist, and this one,
Right.
When he could have just been like, hey, look, we all know that the younger the test subject, the fewer side effects we get, and so let's just get a younger subject. Like that's all he really needed to say, because these people are all working on this project. They know how their patients have reacted to the serum.
Right.
Right. So it felt a little heavy-handed. And if I had a consistent criticism of this show so far, it is that some of these elements are heavy-handed.
Right.
It does lack a deft touch, I think. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say that it's not still interesting. But that's because I think I have a sentimental attachment to the story of the book.
Me too.
So I don't know if this show is going to resonate with people who haven't read the books, is my concern.
Right. And I do think that's, I mean, again, like we're seeing the first couple episodes, I was prepped for like a total disaster. So I'm not sure how it will play out. So we shall see.
I think total disaster is definitely staved off by the performances.
Yep.
Mark Paul Gosselaar and the girl playing Amy have real chemistry.
They do. And that's the important part in terms of this, I think, this storyline. I guess like the things that are troubling me the most are the whole medical professional thing. And you kind of feel like, so at least in the books, Dr. Jonas Lear, he's doing these things, and they have a lot of, there's a lot based upon the stuff that his wife was ill. In the books, it's with cancer, and cancer seems to be the main issue in terms of what they're trying to do. But in this show, it's like his wife has Alzheimer's, and, they kind of push that along. But in some ways, he's somewhat... I felt in the book he was being really leaned upon by the military and the secrecy. Like, he's kind of being held captive in a way as well. So you feel a little bit more like he's being forced into some of the decisions he's having to make in the books, as opposed to in this, where he totally seems complicit. So that was kind of weird.
The last scene in the second episode does, where he's with his wife and he's like, "You were so right. I miss you so much." And he does seem, and this is a good actor too. He's the guy from Lost, right?
Yeah. He's played by Henry Ian Cusick, and so he's pretty good.
It's the guy who sat inside the hatch pushing the button for most of his life, and now he pushes other buttons. He doesn't seem to have. He does have a choice, and he has made the wrong ones because he, the idea is that he made these decisions out of love of his wife against her wishes. She was saying, "Don't trust this Fanning guy. He's not. He doesn't have his head or heart in the right place." He went ahead and did it anyway, and now it's like a giant "I told you so" scenario.
One thing I definitely did like in terms of some of the changes and decisions that they made is that within the books, the character list is at least, especially in the beginning, and with the military and with the medical staff, it's very male heavy. And they have switched things up a bit there. So one of the main doctors, they make
the main
doctor is Dr. Sykes. This is not even remotely what her character is supposed to be, but because it's a guy and he's like military and not a doctor at all in the books. But I did like how they switched some of that stuff up a lot. And I definitely think that in terms of weaving the characters together and making sure that they have relationships with each other, which a lot of them are just separate in the books and are kind of coming together from all these different separate areas. I do think that they did an admirable job, in at least in the first couple of episodes, in making this somewhat plausible that they would know each other and that they would come together. So we'll see what happens as this plays out.
How are you liking the performances by our vampires, the Shauna Babcock and Tim Fanning characters, who are the two who have the most lines?
This is the one part that I'm kind of... the one part I am a bit disappointed in. It may just be because of the budget, possibly. I don't think that their makeup is incredibly impressive. I don't think that the sort of evolution from human to vampire is as terrifying as it appears to be in the books. I mean, in the books, the presentation of this virus, so to speak, which I guess we should throw this out there. The whole reason that they capture this is that there's this South American legend, like almost like a vampire legend. Dr. Lear and Fanning go to figure this out because it's the cure for everything. And so they go and they find this random South American vampire-ish type thing, or they get attacked by bats, I guess, is the big thing. They don't even discover a vampire down there. They just get attacked by bats. And Fanning is one of the victims. He's patient zero. They still make him patient zero here. But him and the other test subjects, I mean, the description in the books, like, they become very non-human looking, but like terrifying looking. Like, they lose all their hair. They have these crazy long, almost like glass-like teeth. Like, their own teeth are pushed out. Like, there are huge physical changes that happen pretty rapidly in a horrifying way. That I don't think is presented here, and it's not as scary because of that.
Well, I'm wondering if they're still going to be transforming more. Because, yeah, they do. Right now, it's just like blue veins and orange eyes.
Right.
And maybe some incisors that are bigger.
Right. And,
but that's about it.
And that's, I mean, in the books, it's sort of like, even when it's presented later on, like when it gets out, when the virus gets out, it's like these people are presenting with these like kind of very like viral-like symptoms initially. And then they start to be mentally changed and physically changed, and like their physique just becomes almost bulletproof. Like, they're that sort of muscular. They almost become like I don't want to say superheroes, but that's the kind of strength they have. Very animalistic, and just it's the whole metamorphosis that seems so painful. And they mainly show this through Anthony Carter's experience, who is the first person in the books that we follow who actually goes through this. We see him get injected, or we like read about him getting injected, and then it describes all of his changes, which is just horrible. And so you have a better sense of what Amy is going to be in for, or what the danger of her being in for is, because you watch Carter's metamorphosis. And here it's just kind of like scary dreams, or like weird dreams. Yeah. And
there's a chance that we haven't gotten to the bad part. He's lost a tooth in a dream. And yeah, his dreams are bad. Like, he's talking to Fanning and Babcock in his dreams, and the dreams are really lucid, obviously. Like, that was actually a pretty cool scene where he like walks off the treadmill, and then he walks into like a bar scene almost out of The Shining, and it's very strange.
And I think it's definitely pulling from that.
Yeah.
And so I doubt that was, and you're right, we may not be seeing all the horror laden things that are going to happen to him, but at this point I don't know that they get that across yet. So we'll see. But
I'm also enjoying the performance by the guy playing Anthony Carter. He comes across like this super nice dude.
I know.
And you feel really, he's like, what were you doing on death row to begin with? And I feel bad for you that you're having such a good time running 6 miles and feeling really good about it right now, but I don't see this going on for much longer.
And Carter is played by McKinley Belcher III, and he is really good. And I like him, definitely. I think he's fantastic. This is also, though, a change from the stories from the books, because this particular character is mentally challenged to some extent. and they have not done that in the show. And I think that that's fine because I think you need him. So much of that character's story is not even told through dialogue. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I think you need to have him be this active participant to understand the storyline. So I think that change is absolutely fine. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely am looking. I'm curious to see how everything unfolds, but it's very hard for me to judge whether a fresh audience who doesn't know these books is going to be into this at this point. I feel like they haven't quite gotten there, and maybe it'll get a little bit more interesting as we kind of go through. What did you think about the change with the Lacey character?
So it's been, 10 years or so since I've read the book, or a little less. I'd not reread it before watching the show, which was maybe a mistake.
Oh,
So
see, I
not
did. That's maybe why it's so much more fresh for me.
Yeah, I didn't remember the Lacey character, but I will tell you that this person in the film or in the TV show is kind of hard to believe for me.
Yeah, that was. I don't need so they try to sort of bring her storyline in to make her a former nun, so I guess that's some nod to the old character,
Yeah.
but they didn't
Former nun, former spy.
Yeah, it's a little much.
Survivalist, and this woman just doesn't have any of that vibe. I'm not sure what I'm looking at when I see her, and I have a hard time marrying all the stuff in her house and her
Yep.
security system with what she is and who she is.
Right. And and I think this was one of the most difficult characters. If you're going to change the whole nun storyline, what are you going to do? How are you going to make her have this connection with Wolgast? And what they did was they made her part of this whole military piece. And I agree with you. I think that it was kind of strange how they did it. And I don't know that they really did it successfully. So yeah, we'll see. But I think she's a major part of the story. So I don't think that they could have done without her.
Yeah, she's one of this group of adults who are responsible for Amy Belafonte
Correct.
in the book, which include, and now in the TV show, you definitely get the sense that they were building this cadre of influencers for
Right.
Amy's upbringing, where you've got your nun, you got your agent, you've got your doctor, and between them, they're gonna raise this girl right. So,
Right.
well, obviously Lacey is not going to be part of that, but it's. Yeah, so the second episode ends with them surrendering a second time. They've already surrendered once to the sheriff, and that didn't go very well. I am enjoying the the dogged pursuit by these shadowy agents, and the fact that they seem to have a lot of power from upstream. They've got a lot of backing, so it doesn't really matter where they go. They're getting tracked down and found. As far as Belafonte and Wolgast go.
Yep.
But they've surrendered a second time, this time to the shadowy agents, and it looks like they're going to have to go to Project Noah no matter what in episode 3. And so it's going to be quite a shift, and we'll see more of the vampires and Anthony Carter's transformation, I think, in episode 3.
Right. I think another major shift, though, in terms of the theme of the whole thing, and we'll see, maybe they're going to play this out a little bit later, but there is a very religious aspect to this whole thing. And one of the things that I think they kind of throw out here very quickly, where, I mean, there's some obvious, parallels, but they have the whole 12, like the 12 apostles, and, and then there's the 13th person, so there's that stuff going on, and they're kind of going there, but I feel like they have kind of dampened down that whole sort of underlying theme, but we'll see what happens a little bit later with that. And I think that for the first 2 episodes and all the stuff they're trying to do with it, I think it's probably as successful as they could do it at this point. But one of the things I was really missing was more of the military explanation and the funding, and some of that stuff it felt to me like they left a little bit of a gap in terms of what was happening at Project Noah, but maybe we'll get a little bit more later. just how powerful the organization was. I think we see that it's powerful, but like, one of the scenes that I was thinking should be a little bit more dark and horrible. I mean, the whole thing with when they try to surrender in the books was in the diner, and then they go to the police station, and not like basically the people at the police station, the agents take out everybody because they don't want them talking about Amy, and they don't want them talking about anybody. So it's not only the people in this police station, but it's everybody they met in the diner that they went to. Like they basically, these dark agents took over this little tiny town and silenced it. And that was such a powerful plot point in the book or like example in the book of how powerful these agents are, that, and the organization is, that I feel was missing a little bit.
Yeah, that you don't necessarily pick up on that, and there's still some like shreds of humanity for these people, because when the guy is calling his boss, he's like, "This was a total mess. We lost 3 of our own guys and several people in the police station." So it's not like he's not even taking anything into consideration. And as to your point of not really getting a sense of how powerful Project Noah is, really all you get is the fact that Dr. Major Nicole Sykes is like on a conference call with some unseen person, or does she do some video call conferencing too? And it's just that, like, you just get the sense that it goes higher, that it goes to but you don't really know. No, you don't really know. Anyway, so I feel like this was a decent start. I do have a couple of reservations still, but I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the story, mostly because I know that this is a story that is very dynamic, and you don't really, at least in the book, it's not going to leave you sitting in any place for too long, so you don't get comfortable.
Correct. So I think we're going to see a lot more action in this next episode. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. So we're going to keep going on with this ongoing review of the passage on Reanimated. So join us again next time for episode 197. 197, when we come back and continue to review it. And in the meantime, let us know what you think about it. Holler at us on Twitter, ReanimatedPcast, on email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and our show notes are at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening. Ciao.
All right, bye.